For more than 50 years, this has been the face of Marie Osmond, America's sweetheart. She's a symbol of wholesome family entertainment, with a smile that could light up any stage. The only daughter in a world-famous musical dynasty, she was the little bit country to her brother Donnie's little bit rock and roll. To millions, she was the ideal, a life of faith, family, and fame, all blended into a perfect picture. That image was carefully crafted, meticulously maintained, and broadcast into living rooms across the nation. But what happens when the cameras turn off? Behind that dazzling smile lies a story of almost unimaginable sorrow, a story that the sequins and stage lights could never fully hide. It's a story of private pain, silent battles, and losses that would shatter the strongest of souls. This is the story of a woman who was called a fat embarrassment to her family when she was just a teenager. A woman who survived hidden abuse that left scars no one could see. A woman who fought a battle with depression so dark that she was ready to leave her own family, convinced they'd be better off without her. And at the heart of it all is a loss so profound, so unnatural, it would bring any mother to her knees. This is the tragic, untold story of the real Marie Osmond, and the incredible resilience she has shown in the face of a life that is, by any measure, beyond heartbreaking. Born Olive. Marie Osmond, on October 13, 1959, she was the eighth of 9 children and the only girl in the devoutly Mormon Osmond family. Her path was, in many ways, already paved. Her older brothers, Alan, Wayne, Merrill, and Jay, had already formed a barbershop quartet that was quickly gaining fame. The Osmond brand was built on tight harmonies, gleaming smiles, and an image of unimpeachable wholesomeness. Marie was just 3 years old when she made her television debut on The Andy Williams Show. While it was a brief appearance, it was an induction into the family business. While other kids were learning to ride bikes, Marie was learning choreography, memorizing lyrics, and mastering the art of the public smile. She has since talked about, this time not with regret, but with a stark acknowledgement of how abnormal it was. When she asked if she could go out and play, the answer was almost always no. She was working. She was recording. She was performing. The pressure was immense. She wasn't just a child. She was a professional. And she was the only daughter. She was the Osmond sister, a title that came with its own set of suffocating expectations. While her brothers had each other to lean on, she was often isolated. The family's squeaky clean image meant that any mistake was unthinkable. Every word and every appearance was scrutinized, not just by audiences, but by the Osmond family machine. In her memoirs, Marie has described the soul-crushing nature of this life. Standing next to glamorous guest stars like Cher and Farrah Fawcett, she felt completely inadequate, like a girl playing dress-up who was constantly falling short. She and her siblings were the primary breadwinners, their childhood labor funding, a massive entertainment empire. This wasn't just the loss of a normal childhood. It was the forging of a survival mechanism. Marie learned early on how to please everyone. This people-pleasing attitude, she later admitted, was detrimental to her well-being. The constant need to be the smiling, cheerful girl everyone expected created a deep crack between her public persona and her private self. The seeds of her later struggles were planted in this golden cage, where the price of fame was the quiet erosion of her own identity. The jump from child star to teenage icon is a dangerous one for any performer, but for Marie Osmond, it was a minefield of public scrutiny and private cruelty. At just 15, she and her brother Donnie landed their own variety show, Donnie and Marie. It was a massive success, making them household names. But behind the scenes, a darker story was unfolding. The pressure to be perfect now focused on her physical appearance. In a shocking incident, a producer took her aside into a parking lot. Marie was a petite 5'5" and weighed only 103 pounds. But in the warped world of television, that wasn't good enough. The producer told her, "You're an embarrassment to your family, you're fat." He then twisted the knife, adding that 250 people might lose their jobs because you can't keep food out of your fat face. Those words weren't just an insult, they were a weapon. They instilled shame, fear, and compliance. For a teenager conditioned to please, it was a devastating blow. The message was clear. Her worth was tied to her weight. Her body wasn't her own. It was a commodity that was failing to meet standards. The damage was immediate and catastrophic. "I would literally starve myself for 3 days before taping," she later confessed, surviving on a mix of lemon water, cayenne pepper, and maple syrup to be as skinny as possible for the cameras. The abuse worked. Her weight dropped to a skeletal, 93 pounds. But the weight loss didn't bring relief. It only deepened the psychological damage. She had developed an eating disorder, driven by a distorted view of her own body. The horrifying moment of clarity came in her dressing room. She saw an emaciated skeleton with skin on her and thought how sick the girl looked. Then she stood up and looked in the mirror. The girl was her. In that moment, she understood the awful truth. Body dysmorphia is a real thing. This early trauma set the stage for a lifelong battle with body image. Eating, she admitted, became a way to cope with the immense pressures of her life. The producer's cruel words had planted a seed of self-loathing that would take decades to uproot. Her mother's dying words to her, "Do not do to your body what I did to mine," served as a grim reminder of this struggle. The dazzling smile the world saw was a mask, concealing the deep scars of being told, at her most vulnerable, that she was simply not enough. While the public obsessed over her weight, a far more sinister secret festered in the shadows of Marie's life. It was a trauma she carried in silence for decades. In her 2001 memoir, Behind the Smile, she bravely broke that silence, revealing she had been a victim of sexual abuse during her childhood and teen years. The revelation was shocking, completely contradicting the pristine, protected image of the Osmond family. Marie was careful not to identify her abusers, stating only that they were not family members but people with very temporary access to her life. It wasn't a single event but a series of violations that left her terrified for her safety and the safety of her family, a fear that kept her silent. The psychological fallout was immense. She explained that her only coping mechanism was to push it down and pretend it wasn't happening. But the trauma never went away. It lingered, poisoning her self-esteem and her ability to trust. "I struggled with my self-esteem every day," she wrote. "I never felt I could be good enough. I was never pretty enough." The abuse warped her perception of herself so deeply that it even made her question her own identity. In a stunningly candid moment on The Talk, Marie revealed the confusion it caused about her sexuality. She explained, "When I was 8 or 9, I actually thought I was gay. And the reason is because I had been sexually abused to the point that, man, they made me sick. I didn't trust them. I didn't like them." It was only through the positive example of her father and brothers that she was able to slowly understand that her feelings were a response to trauma, not a reflection of her true self. These early experiences became a dark undercurrent running through her life. She directly linked these traumas to her later battles with severe postpartum depression, suggesting the unresolved pain from her youth created a vulnerability that would break under the pressures of adulthood. Revealing this secret was an act of reclaiming her own story and explaining the invisible wounds that lay beneath the smile. For a woman whose family life was presented as an American ideal, the search for real love proved to be a painful journey. Her romantic life was a series of soaring highs and devastating lows, marked by impulsive decisions and profound heartbreak. Her first major public romance was with Andy Gibb, another young star from a famous musical family. Their relationship was a whirlwind, but it was troubled by Gibb's escalating addiction. The pressure on Marie to save him was enormous, and their eventual breakup was a painful but necessary step. In 1982, she married Stephen Lyle Craig, a basketball player from Brigham Young University. They had a son, Stephen, but the pressures of her career and the media scrutiny were too much for the young couple. They divorced in 1985. "All of a sudden, I'm a single mom and I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent, let alone feed my kid," she recalled. Less than a year later, she married record producer Brian Blowsill. They built a large family, having 2 biological children and adopting 5 more. To the world, it looked like the happy family she was always meant to have. But this, too, was a facade. The marriage to Blowsill was, by her own admission, deeply unhappy for much of its 21 years. She later revealed the home she had created was a facade to a marriage that wasn't happy for 20 years. A devastating house. Fire in 2005 became a painful metaphor for their relationship, stripping away the pretense and forcing her to confront the truth. The final push to leave came from her children. In a heartbreaking confession, she shared that they came to her and pleaded, "Mom, please leave. We gotta get out of here." Their words gave her the strength to finally end the marriage in 2007. The pain of 2 failed marriages left her deeply wounded. "I never wanted to be married again," she stated firmly. But fate had a final, astonishing chapter in store. Through her son, Stephen, she reconnected with her first husband, Stephen Craig. After 26 years apart, they began dating in secret. In 2011, they remarried, with Marie wearing the same wedding dress from 1982. "Nothing is an accident," she reflected. "I am a spiritual person, so I believe God has His timing." It was an improbable, full-circle moment of healing after decades of turmoil. Of all her hidden battles, Marie's struggle with postpartum depression, PPD, was perhaps the most terrifying. After the birth of her son Matthew in 1999, she plunged into a darkness so complete it nearly consumed her. This was a clinical, debilitating depression. "I was absolutely physically exhausted," she explained. "I went into absolute muscle spasms where I couldn't get out of bed. The joy she was supposed to feel was replaced by a profound despair." "You weep, you cry, you have no joy," she described. "It is the most devastating thing that I have ever been through." The illness twisted her thinking, convincing her the family would be better off without her. One day, the crisis peaked. She walked downstairs, handed her nanny the baby, and said, "I can't stay here. There is something terribly wrong with me." With that, she got in her car and just drove, with no destination, desperate to escape the unbearable pain. She checked into a motel completely isolated, and for the first time, she truly understood how someone could want to end their own life. In another harrowing moment, she gave her babysitter blank checks and credit cards and told her she had to leave for a while, again convinced her children would be better off without a mother. This wasn't selfishness. It was a symptom of a severe illness that had convinced her she was a danger to the people she loved most. Her rescue came from a phone call with her own mother, Olive. In that call, Olive shared a secret she'd never told. She had gone through the exact same thing. That single confession was a lifeline. It broke through Marie's isolation, assuring her she wasn't alone and what she was experiencing was real and treatable. "That call," Marie said, "helped me turn a corner." With support, medication, and therapy, Marie began the slow process of recovery. She later wrote about it in her memoir, Behind the Smile. My Journey Out of Postpartum Depression, hoping to tear down the stigma surrounding PPD. She had walked through fire and emerged with a new purpose: to shine a light on the darkness, so that other mothers might find their way out. For any parent, losing a child is the ultimate tragedy. This nightmare became Marie Osmond's reality on February 26, 2010. Her beloved adopted son, Michael, died by suicide at age 18, jumping from his Los Angeles apartment. This would become the defining tragedy of her life, a wound that could never fully heal. Michael had battled depression for years, a fight his family knew about. He had been in rehab in 2007 and seemed to be doing better, but the darkness lingered. Years later, Marie revealed a heartbreaking part of his suffering. "My son who died, he was bullied," she said on The Talk. "He was bullied very heavily, right up until his death because of his sobriety. After working so hard to get clean, he was tormented for his choice. I've got the texts," she shared, her voice heavy with pain. "I mean, they are horrendous. I believe that was a big component in him just feeling overwhelmed and that he didn't fit in." The final conversation Marie had with her son is a memory seared into her soul. He called her, sounding miserable and friendless. Drawing on her own experience, Marie understood his loneliness. She tried to reassure him, telling him, "Mike, I'm going to be there Monday and it's going to be okay." But as she later reflected with unbearable sadness, depression doesn't wait till Monday. The next evening, she received the phone call every parent dreads. The aftermath was a blur of shock and devastation. "I don't think you're ever through it," she later shared. The grief is a constant companion, tormented by the what-ifs that haunt any parent who has lost a child to suicide. What if I had just put him on a plane and said, "Come be with me"? In the face of this unimaginable heartbreak, Marie leaned on her faith. "I don't know how people get through it unless they have a strong faith in God," she confessed. Her belief in an afterlife and the hope of being reunited with Michael became her anchor. Just a week after his funeral, she returned to the stage. For her, it was a necessary act of survival. The loss of Michael left a permanent void in her life, a tragedy so immense it casts a long shadow over every joy. As if the emotional burdens weren't enough, Marie's physical health has also been a source of struggle. She has faced a series of health scares that have tested her endurance and reminded her of her own mortality. She has suffered from chronic migraines and was once rushed to the hospital for a severe case of bronchitis. But the most alarming health revelation came in 2023, when Marie disclosed she had undergone surgery to remove 17 breast tumors. While she didn't specify if they were malignant, she described the experience as intense. Having lost dear friends like Olivia Newton-John to breast cancer, the scare was particularly poignant. These personal challenges unfolded against a backdrop of professional goodbyes. In 2019, after an incredible 11-year run, she and Donnie ended their residency at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas. While rumors of tension circulated, especially after a 2010 lawsuit where a producer accused Donnie of greed and Marie of complicity, the end was publicly framed as a mutual decision to pursue individual projects. It was the end of an era, not a bitter divorce. Her faith has remained her primary coping mechanism through it all. It is this spiritual resilience that allowed her to find joy again, especially in her remarriage to Stephen Craig, a moment she sees as a miracle from God. Marie Osmond's life is a profound paradox. On one hand, it's a story of dazzling success. On the other, it's a relentless chronicle of tragedy: abuse, public shaming, debilitating depression, and a mother's ultimate loss. The sheer weight of her burdens is staggering. Yet to define her only by her suffering is to miss the most remarkable part of her story. At 65, Marie Osmond is not just a survivor. She is a testament to the unyielding power of the human spirit. She has faced the darkest parts of the human experience and has chosen again and again to get back on stage and share her light. Her story teaches us that resilience isn't the absence of pain, but the courage to move forward in spite of it. It's a story of faith, not as a shield from hardship, but as an anchor in the storm. The tragedy of Marie Osmond is beyond heartbreaking, but the strength of Marie Osmond has always been beyond measure. If you've ever admired Marie Osmond, or have been touched by her story of resilience, let us know in the comments what you find most inspiring about her journey. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about the icons who have shaped our world.